Hello, everyone. Let's start this roundtable that is focused on cyber insurance. I'm happy to welcome four persons. We have Thierry Piton,
National Souscription Risque Cyber chez AXA, Arnaud Martin, directeur des risques opérationnels cyber et contrôle chez Caisse des dépôts, Diane Fattelet,
Head of Business and Insurance Intermediary Office, General Treasury Directorate, and Sébastien Chaudron, CEO at Lexfo. I introduced them very quickly. Maybe we can take a minute and so you can introduce yourself in more details and talk about your organization. Let's start with Diane. Do you hear me? Hello, everyone. Thank you again for inviting me. So I am Diane Fattelet. I am at the head of Insurance Regulation Office, General Treasury Directorate. In the direction of insurance, we have two offices, one focused on product and the other one that is focused on the regulation on new subjects that we will treat today about cybersecurity. Hello, everyone. Thierry Piton, National Cyber Risks Underwriting Specialist at AXA. We have in France a cyber contract since about 10 years. We insure all kinds of insurances, small to medium and large enterprises. We have two different distribution antennas. We have cyber engineering. We have subscribers all over France, and we insure. We have a new position on the market that integrates a new package. There can be assistance and guarantee, of course. Sébastien. Hello. Sébastien Chaudron, CEO of Lexfo, companies that is specialized more over 15 years in security audit. You probably know ANSSI. Also, we treat data recuperation in ransomware. Arnaud Martin, I work at the deposit fund. So what is the link with the small to medium enterprise? I will maybe not intervene with this hat, but more with the association that I work for about RSSI. We have large companies that we work with, and let's say that we have half small and half large companies, and I will give you a feedback on what some of the members give us so that I can illustrate the debate. We'll stay with you, Arnaud. We're going to focus on the numbers that you have. They can help us understand the state today of the cyber insurance. Yes, every year we have heat map that is published every year. We give the questionnaire to about 1,200 people, and we have a panel that is pretty representative in terms of answers. We have about 500 answers. And to explain, we'll give you several digits, but we have some digits that don't really match with what we're studying here today. But we're not only on the small and mid enterprises. We are about 15%. For those SMEs, we asked them several questions. They are around the cyber insurance, of course, and we have the statistics that I can show you on the screen. Well, first of all, was to know how many companies had subscribed to cyber insurance and what were the statistics. So we have 72% that have subscribed on cyber insurance. Big companies would be over 80%. And we asked them the question, if you subscribe, do you plan on renewing your subscription, or on the contrary, you just give up and you don't want to go there? So among the 72%, we have 74% that want to renew their subscription. So this shows that we are on a topic that is very on the long term. Some of them hesitate. That's just 7%, so it's pretty low. 7% of those that subscribe and don't want to renew. What may be paradoxal here, when we have a number of incidents, there is only 1/4 of the companies that have called for the incident police. So 77% of those, the remaining 23%, we asked the question, so did everything go well? When we implied the cyber insurance, are you happy of, the handling of your case? We have 14% of those 23 that say it did go well, and 9% that says it was okay, but it was very complicated. Resolution was given, but it was complicated. And then we have other questions about cyber notation. Maybe I'm not going to go there again. We might have an opportunity to talk about it later, but the subject is very linked to that, is that when we implement policy, we ask the question, which is actually different, is on the companies that were implied in the incident, how many actually filed a complaint? We have 38% of the companies that did not file a complaint pertaining to those incidents. So it's not really come to the use, but we see that the remainder of those companies, so let's say 29% of those filed a complaint automatically, and 33 that filed a complaint only about one cyber attack on the previous year. Thank you very much, Thierry. Maybe you can give us some vision. Yes, I will give some more. So let's say if the French insurer, we have 352 million euro. It's a very small market when we compare it to the insurance that is, of house and etc. So cybersecurity insurance, 352 million is pretty low. We are, let's say, stable in terms of contracts. And we have very low subscription rate on the ETI. It is actually progressing. We have 21% so far, and we see it every day. The large companies have actually made a great progress in terms of cybersecurity insurance. Sometimes we even have like farm companies that actually call for insurance, which is pretty surprising, but it is still something we need to develop, especially for the small and medium companies. It's very low. It's 0.2, so it's almost inexistent, but it actually is progressing. It's 33% increase since 2023. But it is pretty low compared to the 3% of the medium-sized company. The threat is very targeted on medium-sized companies, so they are the priority for the attackers. The threat is very linked, as I said, on this target, and it's very concerning for the economy. Right, we actually could raise this question: why do medium-sized companies are so poorly equipped, and why the top of the companies that are larger are almost all of them insured? So maybe, Sébastien, you can give us a little bit of information about this. Actually, I will talk a little bit about history. Let's go back to 10 years before. I used to work for ANSSI, and 10 years ago, ANSSI was pretty new. It opened to the new world and was actually raising awareness on small to medium and big companies. Then many of those topics actually were linked to that, but most of them were actually big companies. All of this contributed to a better knowledge of the threat and understanding of the cyber risks, and unlocked the budget. The nomination of cybersecurity heads in the companies also shows that it developed and mind of the companies. We now have budgets that are getting bigger, and I see that at Lexford. It's been 5 years. We see a development in this area, and in those large groups of cyber insurance. It's not really my specialty, but let's say that I'm seeing in terms of right. Yeah, on large companies, cybersecurity insurance is about 20 years old. I have the feeling that it's actually changing in terms of medium-sized company. In those large associations, we have feedback about cyber attacks, and they actually made those cyber attacks public in order for insurers to study them and give testimony. So this actually raises awareness, and big companies actually start to understand that this is very crucial. It is changing, so let's, continue raising awareness for medium-sized companies. Diane, if we take the vision of the General Treasury Directorate, well, actually, what was said is pretty much what I think. What said Sebastian, the first subject is the medium-sized companies are actually starting to understand that, but the main concern is actually the cost of it because it's very expensive. There's another factor that is actually more linked to the culture. When we're a small company, we believe that we will not be attacked. Big attacks used to be on big companies, but this is not the case anymore. It is the reason why the reglementation, all the efforts that we put for awareness is more on the small and medium-sized companies. So the subject is really important. We need to keep in mind that the attacks remain limited, which is a good thing. 1 out of 2 actually goes through. Which has really bad repercussions. So as I say, it is cultural and also a cost issue. The regulation was actually linked to big companies, whereas it's just starting to be the case for mid-size and small companies. So the obligations were not forced on those small and medium companies. So DORA is actually going to be linked to all of the companies. So these are all of the elements that help develop the risk awareness of cyber threat, but also with NICE, we have also NIS2 that NIS2, I'm sorry. So there are 3 reasons why there's only 3% of small and medium-sized enterprises that are insured. So Arnaud, talking about Orange, can you give us some more feedback? Well, I will kind of say the same thing. It's been 10 years, 15 years that they have this in their DNA to ensure and to pilot the cyber risk through internal teams and call for resources, but also to pilot the cyber risks and to develop their vision. When you are working in a bank, the handling of cyber risk is linked to the risk handling. So we have the ability to develop tools, but we also need to implement that in the mitigation of risk in order to lower the risk. So this is something that is linked to the DNA, but maybe we can give the idea that there is also a level of when big enterprises have subscribed to cyber insurance, they will actually look around them to see, why do I not have a cyber insurance? And they will give pressure to their boss in order to get that insurance.
Alors Thierry, si on prend maintenant la
Thierry,
question à
if we
l'envers,
take
pourquoi les
the
PME sont
question
encore aujourd'hui
backwards,
sous-équipées?
why do small enterprises are under-equipped? Well, there is clearly a problem. There's been a poll. There's 62% of the CEOs that just believe they don't are a target. They just don't feel that they will get an attack, so this is really, really big. And there's other enterprises that believe that they can be linked, but still they don't feel concerned because they don't think they have sensitive data. And some of them say, well, my data is in the cloud, so it should be secure, right? But these are still like things that people have misunderstanding. They don't understand the threat and the operational modes in order to protect themselves, and they don't understand the impact of cyber attacks. They think that the impact will be very little, but they don't understand how important it is and how damaging it can be on their companies. Therefore, there's a lot of awareness in order to explain how important it is. There's another idea where some people think that they have an insurance on cyber because they have insurance on a lot of topics in their companies, and they believe that in their contract they already have this. So this is another belief that people have. But of course, some of those contracts don't have a cyber insurance. So this is something we need to explain them. On this topic, it's been a problem for a long time in terms of Treasury. There were implicit clauses in the contract, and they did not understand the risk and if the cyber attacks were covered. So in 2022, there was a report done on this topic, and I invite you to read it. In the recommendations, there was this will to explain the small prints in terms of cyber insurance. So it's been 2 years that we actually follow the progress in the insurance companies. So this is something that is progressing. The knowledge for the companies is getting better. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's going in the right direction. Thierry, we were talking about awareness. It's very important, but what are the good practices in terms of this? In small companies as well as big companies, I think that all of you have experienced that when it is not the director of the cybersecurity or the equivalent RSSI that will try to convince the big boss or the big boss of the companies that it is a big risk. Of course, it is their role, but however, he doesn't have the entire attention because he will vehiculate different messages, can be very worrying. And when the awareness is made from one boss to another that says, it happened to me, so please be careful because that can actually happen to you, this has more impact. So it gives a better vision on all of the channels of awareness and to develop the culture of cyber insurance. It doesn't have to be only about the experts. It's very important that people share the experience. And what we see in the boss of a medium-sized company, by definition, doesn't necessarily have insurance for cybersecurity. He will have insurance for his car, and he will file a complaint, and he will put in practice his insurance. So why, in the case of cybersecurity, he doesn't know if he's covered by policy, and why doesn't he have the reflex to file a complaint about this? Thierry, what are the economics actors that are more important? Well, AXA, it's actually very important. We insure 1 out of 3 small to medium-sized companies in France. We collaborate with LOFAC, and our goal is to raise awareness and to push people to file a claim. We need to explain them that they need to keep their proof numerically. And it's very useful to have someone outside of the company to explain all of this. So it's very popular. The second subject that's very important is that they need to have someone to exchange with them in terms of risks. It's important to not only talk about technical aspects. We need to show them that we need to treat the cyber risk at the top of their ladder, and we need to treat that in terms of risks. What can actually cost to the company in terms of losses if it gets an attack. So who is the better placed person? It would be the insurer. And they need to integrate that in the risk handling. I was part of a working group with the cyber campers to determine who is best positioned to deliver this type of mission. And this individual convey a message that listen to. The same goes for local organization. They have seen independent figures who discuss risk management, and we actually train them. When you actually mentioned anti-crime, cybercrime office.
Parler aux dirigeants, mais en termes de gestion de risque financier, de risque pour leur activité, c'est des risques vitaux. Et ils ne sont pas du tout dans la technique. On ne va pas leur parler.
Yes, this independent figure is actually not talking in terms of technical aspects, but is actually raise awareness in terms of risk management.
De 2022 dont vous parliez tout à l'heure, il y a également ce genre d'input.
Dans le fameux rapport, effectivement, on a recensé tous les leviers.
Right. In the report that we published, we outlined a number of legal, financial, and awareness data collection initiatives. So we started working on different areas. What we actually mentioned earlier, there are more subjects. Filing a complaint is very important.
Nos collègues du ministère de l'Intérieur, justement, visait, parce qu'on était dans ce débat, je ne sais pas si vous vous rappelez, sur...
I don't know if you remember the question of... The question was, should we insure ransomware, yes or no? So we had considered that in terms of treasury, we needed to be more practical.
Donc on a pris le parti, effectivement, d'aller dans cette démarche.
And so we actually wanted to condition the budget. We also established a complaint filing procedure that allowed businesses to file a complaint within 72 hours and to be able to benefit from the cyber insurance. Additionally, we set up an observatory in collaboration with INCYBER.
Notamment justement sur les risques, les impacts.
There is also an awareness risking aspect aiming to move beyond the cyber framework, for example, involving lawyers to educate as widely as possible about those risks. So creating this process to access the data and to study where the threat is living, these are very important things. And we exchanged not that long ago with some colleagues at the police and gendarmerie in order to enhance the handling of those complaints. So this is one of the major action points. Awareness also, well, we actually talk about this for a long time today. We talk about intermediaries. So as I say, we still talk about awareness for small to medium enterprise and to teach them about cyber insurance, because this is something that exists and there's a big market to develop and we need to continue this work.
Par les pairs ou par des intermédiaires, elle est juste cruciale.
Oui, mais alors, on s'est adapté aussi.
So we actually adapted our teams as well.
en arrière, mais pour montrer un peu l'évolution, il y a 5 ans.
Actually, 5 years ago, when we used to talk about cyber insurance, we focused on the technical aspects. So we were doing exercises and risk handling.
Au cours de ces 5 dernières années, on a multiplié la réalisation d'exercices de gestion de crise. On en fait de plus en
We
plus.
actually multiplied those exercises, and we
Au profit de cellules de crise décisionnelles, donc avec des membres du COMEX, des responsables métiers, le DRH, le directeur de la communication, des gens qui ne sont pas du métier.
right.
Avec l'aide d'un complice, on a créé un scénario d'attaque.
So we created an attack scenario adapted to the company's information system and aligned with the potential impacts feared by the entities. So we built the exercise on the basis of internal risks management
Et on va confronter finalement les cyber, quels qu'ils soient,
and imply all of the stakeholders,
reputationnels, impact business,
whether it is.
de leur dire
So this actually works better,
sur votre SI,
whereas
etc.
just telling them that they are in danger and there is a big threat.
Vous devez notifier la CNIL. Est-ce que vous devez informer l'ANSSI ou pas, dans quelles conditions?
The idea is to inform them what they should do in terms of cyber insurance.
J'appelle mon assureur. Comment
So who do you call? Your insurance? Do you call LOFAC? And this is exercise that actually works better in terms of awareness.
sensibiliser un peu et à amener d'autres acteurs dans le jeu.
The idea is to bring more actors in the game and to raise awareness. Thierry, if we talk about filing a complaint, well, yes, filing a complaint is very important. If it is not done within 72 hours,
Il y a donc une déchéance quelque part de la garantie du contrat.
there will be a mishappening in the contract. So filing a complaint within 72 hours is very important.
Dans le commissariat ou la gendarmerie.
You can go to the police.
Rappeler aussi quelque part que le pré-dépôt de plainte ne vaut pas plainte et
So if you do a pre-complaint file, that doesn't count in the 72 hours. You need to file the actual complaint.
Très court dans le délai, on leur conseille d'envoyer une lettre recommandée.
We also advise those companies that they send a letter in order to have a trace of this.
Sébastien, vous vouliez réagir?
Ouais, je voulais réagir sur aussi ce qu'on voit beaucoup pour des PME.
Right. I wanted to add something about the fact that some companies want to actually pay the ransom. They want to negotiate because they are feeling ashamed that they were victims of a cyber attack. So this is something that we need to raise awareness as well. Don't pay the ransom. Of course, we advise not to do that, but this temptation is very important. In the small to medium enterprises, it's very important to get back the data that was stolen.
Alors Thierry va réagir, oui.
Non, mais celles qui payent la rançon dans
The companies that pay the ransom usually are the ones that don't have insurance. They feel that they don't have a way out. So we see that most of the companies that are victims of cyber attacks, they have that insurance and the opportunity to put back the system in the right track, and of course not to pay the ransom. Insurers company have obligations. They have backup that is not connected.
Capacité en tout cas de se retrouver dans une situation où il devrait payer la rançon parce qu'il n'a pas d'autre choix.
And so, as I said, most of the companies that pay the ransom are the companies that don't have a solution and that don't have
Deux
insurance.
mots-clés, donc les prérequis, effectivement, les attendus de votre part par rapport à une PME qui souhaite s'assurer, et puis l'assistance. Je vous propose de commencer par les prérequis.
Oui. Alors les prérequis, c'est des...
So the prerequisite, it depends on the size of the companies, but in fact, if we talk about small to medium-sized companies, they are very limited. It only is limited to the hygiene of data security. 50,000 euros in terms of benefits per year.
Donc la souscription a été bien facilitée.
So subscription was made very easy, and we have digital tools that allow intermediaries to subscribe online. So this part is very easy for small, medium companies. What we need to explain to the companies is what is insurance company. We need to teach them, so we provide them with tools, and this is something that we need to explain. At AXA, this is a full package. The first step is prevention, and we explain to them what is prevention. This is included in the contract.
Qui permettent à l'entreprise de corriger, prendre connaissance des vulnérabilités et de les corriger, mais aussi une plateforme de sensibilisation avec des tests de phishing pour les salariés d'entreprise.
So we organize phishing tests for employees and a batch of different exercises, and we selected different service providers in order to teach the companies. We are working with them hand in hand, and this is what is the most important. We know the threat is growing really, really fast, and we need to really grow with them. Whatever the level of insurance that we implement, the fact is, we know that a cyber attack is possible, and we need to provide them with a cyber insurance. And we need to help them with all of the crisis aspect, whether it is communication, legal, filing a complaint. They actually need help and support on the subject, and this is also something that we put in place is psychological support, because sometimes the CEO of a small, medium enterprise, the impact is very strong psychologically, also on the collaborator, because an employee can also feel so ashamed that he actually clicked on an email that he was not supposed to. So we also provide psychological support. And our goal is to reduce the loss of activity in the company. So this is what we provide and work hand in hand with experts. I think what is important, if we want to have the ambition to go bigger, we need to also scale the help. Of course, we have big companies, small companies, medium companies, but we need to keep in mind that we have to scale that. When we are big companies, we want to vehiculate this proportional idea on the small subtractors so that they can acquire this security hygiene. This proportionality principle, and what we've seen so far is that on the level of the regulatory level, I don't talk about NICE2 or DORA. We do have those different scale, but in older contracts, we didn't really have the vision. I think that we are not yet on the proportionality aspect. When there's a cyber incident, we need to file a complaint and go to the authorities like ANSSI. If we need to make a declaration,
la réponse à l'incident à proprement parler, plus la communication interne dans l'entreprise, plus les communications externes.
Internal communication, external communication. We are very lucky. We are part of a big group. We have different structures in terms of legal or notification, communication. And I imagine that in a small structure, the 72 hours, I'm not sure that it's possible. 72 hours is very short when you have a small team. We know that there is a subject on this 72 hours, and we have discussions in order to see if we can actually make this more able. 72 hours is a very short time. So we want to make this more efficient, especially for small companies. So this is the first part. And second part is we need to repeat, actually take a sidestep. The proportionality is a good idea in terms of implementing this idea in the text of the insurance contracts. There is this will to go more in the dosage in terms of actors. And I think this will involve within the next few years in terms of reglementation, and it's a great thing. I know that in the Treasury it's very important to link to the ANSI and the cybersecurity that there is text that is actually understandable. It should be not something too complicated. We want it to be very understandable, and we work on this very much. So we are still learning, and we still make errors. And then sidestep again, we talk about cyber insurance. Insurance is, I want to say, it's the last strategy in terms of preparation when you face a risk in terms of cybersecurity. If companies didn't do the necessary work in terms of cyber resilience, the insurance is not a magical tool. It's the last step when the company has taken all of the necessary hygiene measures. It seems to be normal that this company should be insured. And this is, a last step. There is a real role in the big companies to implement those good practices in terms of contract handling. They can also be linked to NICE 2 or DORA. I see that at Orange, we had this role of good practice. We had security forms annexes that required suppliers to make patching commitment. So they just read the 72 pages and they didn't understand anything. So we wanted to keep this to a one-page summary. If there was a certain numbers of patches that were not done, the goal was always to not implement those penalties, but to raise awareness. And as you said, to just make, the person that is responsible realize that there's a lot of work to be done on this part, and we need to be compliant in terms of contracts. The finality in the big structures, it is this. Beyond that, there is a whole part of the economy that is not part of a supply chain, and that also needs to be made aware of those issues. The small contractors, in order to do business, will have to prove its reliability.
C'est tout le réseau qui est à risque.
Alors,
c'est une petite pièce du jeu qui est juste déficitaire de ce point de vue-là.
Thierry, le rôle des...
Right, so Thierry, the role of the major principals, contractors in the supply chain, well, it's increasingly important, and we've just talked about it. In fact, the aim is to protect yourself and, above all, through the supply chain, to impose security measures. So our position is, with respect to these stakeholders, but above all, to the subcontractors in the supply chain. And insurance has a very important role to play in this framework. Typically, in security measures that are implemented, we were talking about the two situations for prevention in the contract, to have an external scan, which makes it possible to scan your information system seen from the outside. And these are tools that large companies use to be able to assess their subcontractors. So the fact that a small company has these tools makes it possible to correct them, to make corrections to protect themselves, but also to have a good score from their clients. So the idea here is also to develop the business, is to say, well, protect yourself because there's a risk for you, so it's risk management, but also meet the expectations of these major clients in the big industries, and that will allow you to develop your business, and that's extremely important. And it also, impacts insurance cover that increasingly major companies are asking for their subcontractors to have. So, and there can be very high amounts in terms of the guarantees that are provided, the coverage. So our idea is to support these clients because we look at them in a specific way. We look at the amounts that are asked for, and insofar as possible, we support them. Of course, there's sometimes a call for tenders, a potential public contract, for example, or private contract. The title here is Cyber Insurance as a Comprehensive Solution to Strengthen the Resilience of Businesses, to enhance the economic performance as well, you think? Yes, it's just been said in part by the previous speaker. I think that companies will increasingly have to justify, to show that they are strong, resilient, and insured. And this is going to provide a marker. It will be a source of appeal, attractiveness, because for a big client, it will be increasingly appealing to have a subcontractor who has that backing, that support. So it will give rise to an improved selection process based on performance, and we're all, protecting each other collectively. So it's like a collective immunity approach to have cyber resilience tools in place and insurance cover to be able to face that risk. So we're convinced of that. And regulation, whether it's national or European, will encourage this movement. It's not just put in place, to bother companies or to annoy them. It's really to try to move towards a culture of taking risks into account and to become stronger. Well, clearly we're aware of the fact that the international context now is really asking this question. Sovereignty, preservation of data, keeping our strength, whether it's national or European. So if there were any doubts about this in the past, this is now a very important topic, undeniably. Arnaud, you're going to have to leave us in a few minutes because I think you have an interview. Maybe just a word in conclusion then. Yes, just to follow on from this last topic now. Well, clearly everyone is aware that in Andorra there's an R which is related to resilience, because the final purpose of all of this, which we can see this all in the banking area, to avoid systemic risk with a bank that will lead another bank to fall and so on. And on smaller structures, we have this notion of, will business continue? So in our group, Caisse des Dépôts, the French bank, we have the big group, of course, but we have small branch offices and small affiliates. And the way we support them is to supply a number of services, including services that are related to affiliates from the parent company, which gives them the possibility of having that brick. And then there's the question is also potentially, and these are very contractual discussions with our insurers. So small affiliates, which are basically on the same information system as us, do they also have the cyber insurance of the parent company? So there are all sorts of discussions concerning that as well. Well, okay, we'll let you go then. Thank you so much, Arnaud. Sébastien, perhaps you wanted to add something? No. No, I actually just want to say that I agree with what has just been said regarding the importance, the challenge, but of a better understanding of all the legal texts, whether we're looking at regulatory texts, which bind the company, and often, there are not enough people in the company to really understand the text, but also the insurance policies. There's a lot of work to, we need to explain to our clients. We need to talk about the consequences of taking out a number of insurance policies. And Thierry was saying earlier that what they do is organize sessions, to explain the situation. So if you get a cyber attack, what's going to happen? You work with a panel of partners. Who are these partners? How are things going to be organized as a sequence? And to show the SMEs that these stakeholders, well, everybody, whether you're an insurer, cybersecurity service provider, that everybody talk to each other for the good of SMEs to create an atmosphere of trust. Well, just to tell you a little anecdote that dates back to about 3 years now. We were asked by an insurer, an insurance company, Lexfo, asked us in a national security incident that hit a mid-sized company in France. They talked to us about that, and it took some time to sort it out. Well, the victim entity, things weren't going very well with them, in fact, and we realized too late that there was a suspicion due to the fact that we'd been appointed by the insurance company. There was suspicion on the part of the victim. Well, they were saying, you're here to prove that I did something wrong, and so you are going to get back to the insurance company and say that the cyber attack comes from, flaws on my end. And we're going to say, no, that's not what's going to happen. Sure, the insurance company asked us to intervene, but that's not how insurance companies work. They're here to assist the victim. And we had to actually explain it to them ourselves. But the whole process was slowed down because of that distrust initially between the victim and ourselves. So I think there's been quite a lot of work that has been done to explain the situation, to raise awareness, to improve this sort of situation. And I believe that really we have to talk much more and make the whole process much more transparent for SMEs. Yes, I fully agree with what was said. We need to explain ahead of time how we're going to intervene and how the coordination will take place. So a quick meeting with the client is useful, and when the attack actually arrives, we can all be aligned and go off in the same direction. So maybe some questions from the room, if there are any. There's a microphone. Yes, you, sir, in the first row. Sorry, second row.
Bonjour, merci de vos éclairages.
Yes, there's a topic I still don't understand. We talked about those who provide contracts, guarantees. You define your distribution channel with brokers. But why do the major prescribers, Lexfo, for example, why are these people not insurance prescribers? After all, selling insurance is selling a contract. The risk is borne by you. Why do we feel like there are two very different worlds, the world of cybersecurity by engineers for engineers and cyber insurance? So why is there a language problem there? Why aren't you using this as a digital or as a sales channel? Yes, that's a very good question. These are things that evolve and evolve quite a lot right now. Some time ago, there were two worlds that weren't talking to each other very much. And IT providers were saying, what is the insurer doing? Isn't he going to take my business to the client? And so we're going, we explain that we are here to coordinate the incident response process. We're not here to replace anyone, but we need to really raise awareness and make sure people understand what it is we want to do. And these are things we really communicate about a lot, and we got more and more requests. We're at the forum now, and we've seen many different IT entities and executives come to talk to us about this, because they are never going to become insurance salesmen. They're not going to be at Orias, which is the insurance governing body in France. So these are people who are going to indicate an opportunity to an insurance agent. So increasingly, we have partners of this sort in the French regions, and it's very interesting. They even succeed in having joint meetings with the service provider, the insurer, to bring together companies in a given territory. This is implemented. Progress has been made, and there's still a lot of things to do, and I'm sure this is an excellent channel because everybody works together to develop our joint activities. Sébastien? Well, it's true that a few years ago we were just competitors. I had clients who said, well, I have a budget. Do I take out a cyber insurance or do I take out a subscription to your incident response service? It's true that all of this is changing. Crisis management today is not just forensic, you know. There's a lot of crisis management, there are legal assistance, crisis communication, if there are regulation authorities, for example. So we're working, well, increasingly well with all the stakeholders in the world of insurance. I was, for the first time, at as a cybersecurity company, it's the first time I went to a conference at the beginning of this year talking to people from the insurance sector, because we were just competitors in the past. Yes, you, sir. Thank you for your conference. I have a question for Mr. Piton and Ms. Vasily. Sorry, just talk close to the mic so we can hear you. So it's a question for Mr. Piton and Ms. Vasily. Should a cyber insurance be mandatory, so compulsory for all organizations, in light of the economic fallout of ransomware incidents in particular, and what... So, mandatory insurance first, sorry, and then we'll come to the second question. Yeah, that's a question that comes up a lot. In France, I'm going to start with France, we have many mandatory insurances already. It's a very French thing. We do not necessarily want to add in a new insurance obligation. In any case, not now. I think, well, because your question was related to mandatory insurance, maybe to have a fund with then the central government, the state behind it. But yeah, we don't think this is the time to do it. Looking at what happens on the natural disaster front, which is a very well-known system, and it works well, undeniably. Why have we implemented this public-private partnership? Because we think that there is a gap on the market, and in that case, the market cannot face this gap, and so we have to have the power of the state behind that. You probably followed the discussions that are currently underway about insurance companies who no longer want to cover natural disasters, for example, for local government authorities. We've seen this market for cyber insurance, which is growing with many opportunities for insurance companies, and also something which is very close to the company, which can get support in both in technical terms and in insurance terms. And so the idea is to mobilize, well, the idea of mobilizing public funding to do that, we feel it's not the right time. It could be in combination with insurers, a combined fund. Do you want to do that? Sorry, to make a fund among insurers to finance cyber. No, I don't think, you know, jokes aside, I don't think we want to do that right now. But in the future, maybe the European Union will want to address this as a systemic risk and say we need to do something. And on the French side, we're saying the priority is to develop this market and the insurance offer that goes with it. And we consider that there's no reason for it not to be developed in light of the amounts at stake and the technical aspects and the opportunities. I apologize, but if this type of insurance were mandatory, all the stakeholders in the economy would also have to have mandatory measures in place. That would be like a trade-off then. Well, yes, as insurers, we rely on prevention measures implemented by companies, and this is very important. And we will not equip companies who have not taken those first steps to reduce the risk. So it's important to remove all the obstacles and impediments, and we said so at the beginning, we need to first of all remove all the obstacles to allow the market to develop. Thank you, sir, for your question. Are there any other questions in the room? Yes, you, sir.
Bonjour et merci.
Hello, thank you. I'm working in the health sector, so I wanted to have cyber insurance. I talked to a broker about it. Of the 5, only 1 answered. Well, others answered, well, they refused because they said that the health sector is part of an exclusion clause and does not, well, there's no insurance for the health sector. Is that the case at AXA as well? No, it is not an exception clause or exclusion clause. We have policies where in some cases we are not in a sector as a whole. It is hospitals that is an exception. I work for a warehouse, health data. We recover health data, and we are a center with health data. No, so we're not closed to that. We're not closed to the health sector in general, only to hospitals, as was said. For the time being, we have just our position on hospitals is something that's different because there's a strong impact and they're really targeted. So we're not yet in a maturity situation, and we've actually taken a step back from hospitals. That doesn't mean we won't come back to hospitals when we feel the maturity is okay to face the threats. But overall in health, I mean, generally, there are several sectors that are insurable. Yes, there's someone just next to you, sir. Yes, hello, thank you for the roundtable. I have a question about maturity that follows on from what was just said. For the maturity of the world of insurance and cyber insurance, I have an example which relates to the 72 hours mentioned earlier. We're a limit between a small, very small company, fewer than 10 employees, and an SME. The manager clicked on an email, nothing happened, nothing visible happened. He called his IT provider and his insurer, and the insurer said, well, recommended his incident response providers, and they presented quite a high quote for a small company of that size. At AXA, you were talking about service providers with preferential rates. Can all insurers have this risk analysis and have this proportionality of incident response for very small companies? So is the cyber insurance market mature for all insurers? AXA is making efforts in all the regions. I come from quite a remote region, but not everyone has the same level of maturity for insurance. Is that true, or is it a bias, I mean, a skewed perception on my part? Well, I can't talk for all insurers, but we have expertise, and as I was saying, we have experts who are very familiar with this. It's very important, whether it's prevention, settlement of disputes, everybody has to be an expert and know exactly what it is we're dealing with. Then, related to what you said, there are two different things. The panel of outside service providers is related to prevention. We're not in the assistance phase. We have service providers to help companies to reinforce, to strengthen their system with preferential rates. Assistance is something else, or help, or helpline, or whatever. This is going to be, well, if the company has its own service providers or works with them, or we can suggest service providers, and then that's covered as part of the settlement of the dispute. So it's part of settling, the claim situation. So that's the whole point of insurance. That's the whole point of insurance, is at the end of the day, the insurance company signs the checks and refunds the expenses and the losses. So all the service providers in all the areas we've identified, and also the loss of earnings, which is a significant chunk of the money involved. In this case, nothing actually happened. So there was no complaint filed within 72 hours because, well, there was suspicion level was very low. The provider who did the beginning of the response, the incident response, did not find any trace or weak signals of attacks. So the SME did not file any complaint, but the insurance company said, well, you have you didn't file a complaint, but your report said a detected attack. So how do you manage this? Must you systematically file a complaint if you have a suspicion or suspected attack, even if it's not actually an attack? That is a real question, yes. If you have a suspicion of a cyber attack, the insurer will immediately step in to do some forensic analysis to see what actually happened, if anything happened. And when in doubt, it's probably better to file a complaint, yes, because that protects you at least with a registered letter if you want to do it quickly. But I think it's probably better to protect yourself. We have time, maybe just one or two more questions. You, sir, in the second row here.
Merci.
Thank you.
Je vais rebondir sur la question des
I'm just going to come back to the issue of natural disasters.
Nous ne faisons que souscrire à ce que Diane a dit.
So I can only follow, well, agree with what Diana has said. Our DNA is to work when there's a gap on the market, and for the timing, we do not have instructions to support a segment through public reinsurance or underwriting or through a public fund. However, I want to share with you the vision of other countries. We're talking with the British and the Americans. Under the Rishi Sunak government, the Brits had developed an approach to support SMEs and medium-sized and also larger businesses. And in July, the Labour government came into office and everything was abandoned. So this is a regret for PURE, which is the insurer underwriting the terrorism risk in the UK. So working on a solution to make insurance mandatory for small and medium-sized businesses, and to make a prepayment system in place in 72 hours when an SME was attacked. And then companies will be covered through a parametric system. And from the point of view of the Americans, they had take a broad view of this. And so they are working, but there again, the administration has changed. So they are working on a product which will be working with the American Treasury for critical infrastructures. Thank you for sharing that information with us. Diane, you wanted to react? Yes, with PURE we've had discussions recently. Yes, the British administration is at the same point as in France. It brings in questions concerning the architecture of this sort of system, but the fundamental questions about this sort of system, if we wanted to move towards a more centralized coverage of this increasingly significant risk, well, we have to see how to do that, but we consider, at least in France, that it is not the time to do it, and that would send contradictory messages with respect to the protection that people have to implement themselves and companies have to implement themselves. It would send contradictory messages. You know, in the economic situation of the countries, we don't have money to just dish out like that. So we have to look at private insurance first, and then as a last resort, if you feel it's not possible, the central government, the state, can play its role. But the fact that there are initiatives on the part of a number of stakeholders who imagine how we could do things differently if a risk were materialized, I think that's a very healthy approach. And rather than react at the last moment, I think it's important to have solutions that we could implement quite quickly. Maybe we have time just for one last question. Or not. So, no. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to our 4 speakers.